Hey everybody, this is Timothy Bennett here.
It's Aram Banyan.
Welcome back to the Banter Bros. This time we're taking a new direction. It's going to be the Banter Bros goes to the movies.
Yeah.
And in this season 2, we're going to focus primarily on films, movies, because
Different aspects of it, yeah.
everything from just the movies that we like, talking about them, analyzing them, to directors and actors and all that.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of wrapped up in a pretty bow. Because essentially, we've joked around about this in last season, and we have such a hard time not referencing.
Movies are so ingrained in us that we have a lot of trouble having discussions in general where we don't reference at least one. Like, we were having a talk last week, and I said something from a movie, and you're like, you've used that line 5 or 6 times for different things.
Absolutely.
And so that's just the way we are.
Yep. And so we decided that we would redirect our focus a little bit, be a little less everywhere, and a little more
fine-tune it a little bit,
a little more onto the nose or something. And films is typically what we talk about the most. So that is season 2. But tonight, more appropriately, we're gonna do a little kind of like interview, heart to heart.
We're gonna do like a background interview almost. Like,
essentially the idea that we would come up with is that we would kind of talk about what films mean to us, but we would do it in kind of a manner of like an interview-y kind of thing. Mainly, I'm gonna ask Aram some questions, and I'm gonna expect good answers. So
you can expect all you want. I ain't gonna promise nothing.
Story of my life,
right?
But that's how we're gonna do it for at least the first couple episodes, and then we'll dive into what this is all about. So let's just get started.
Start it up.
So, Aram,
that's me.
You are a pretty, I guess, average cinephilia.
Cinephile?
No, it's a cinephilia. Yeah.
That sounds like a fetish.
It does, which is why it was a little hard. It's almost like saying pedophilia or pedophile.
That's why I thought it was like cinephile. I thought, whatever.
A cinephile is the term that's used to say that that's what it is, and cinephilia is like the person that actively is that thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because it's, I guess, the same way as what I just said, like a pedophile.
Yeah.
Into being. Yeah, I don't even want to go that route. Anyway,
let's stop talking about pedophilia for sure.
Anyway, you like films.
Yeah, I mean,
put you down.
I love watching
Let's
films.
Americanize it.
Yeah.
You like films.
I love to watch movies. Like, it's an easy way for me to, escape, I guess would be an easy way to say it. I watched them before I could read, I'm sure. So I was very much a kid that got babysat by the TV some days, so it was one of those things.
That explains everything.
Doesn't it?
No. So, kind of, since you bring that up, as a child, you found yourself being drawn into films, or at least TV. I mean, it's all kind of the same. It's all the same world.
Together,
it's all the same world. What was it that you found to be your like go-to in that kind of thing? Like whether or not it was the genre or if it was television versus movies, what is it did you find that you were drawn to more?
Growing up, a lot of the time, I found myself watching a lot of TV with my grandparents and my mom. Like, so we watched a lot of sitcoms on TV at night. I remember watching, shows like Night Court, Perfect Strangers. I eventually ended up watching a lot of Nick at Night, which ended up exposing me to older shows. Like, I remember watching Get Smart, F Troop, which I don't know if anybody of my age would really remember F Troop or not. I was in black and white. I'll show it to you sometime. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. Roughly. I mean, this is the early '90s that you were a child in, but you.
Yeah. So in 1990,
older,
I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
So.
And given that you were hanging out with older people, you tended to watch a little more of the older shows, which I think is a very common thing. I think it's just part of a childhood who hangs out with
Oh,
their
God, yes.
grandparents.
I mean,
And-
my grandparents, like my other grandparents, I was exposed to Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. That's what I remember watching with my dad's side of the family. Like those grandparents, I'd go stay with them on the weekends. We'd watch a lot of Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy.
Which is nothing wrong with it.
No, nothing at all.
Those trivia shows are pretty informative.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's the baseline of some of my education is probably more Jeopardy than it is anything else.
Sad.
But,
Sad
yeah,
panda.
right.
So, growing up in the 90s, born in the 80s, you were kind of like a child that was bridged between two realms. They were drastically different. 90s
yeah.
films,
God,
TV
yes.
shows to 80s films and TV, films
Yep.
and stuff. They were just drastically different. But as a child, did you favor one kind of era over the other? And if so, in that particular era, what did you find genre-wise to be your kind of go-to, your kind of comfort zone, or your appeal?
I guess if I had to peg it down, my go-tos, sitcoms were what I was, mostly watching, so I mostly gravitated towards other ones like that. I didn't really get into the dramas. Like, I remember NYPD Blue not being big for me, but everyone else like had a gigantic hard-on for that show.
Yep.
Same thing with ER. I didn't give a shit about ER.
Right there with you.
Things like that. I didn't really dig too much, but sitcoms I really enjoy. Like I say, I was exposed to sitcoms like Night Court, which I believe was late 80s. I'd have to go take a look. But I mean, I love Night Court. I actually own all the seasons. So
Yeah,
there's that.
you've been trying to get me to watch that for a little while now.
Yeah, it's good. Like I say, I love John Larroquette. So
And he's the big sheriff guy, right?
John Larroquette is the district attorney.
Oh, okay. Who's the big?
The bailiff is Richard Mall.
That guy.
He
I
plays
recognize.
Bull Shannon.
That's the guy I recognize.
Yeah.
Yep. He's kind of a hard. He's a big guy. He's a tall dude.
He plays the very tropish sort of big, lovable, dumb guy.
Yep. And I've seen him in stuff much later than Night Court, but I've seen him in movies or films or shows or whatever, where he's just a small little role or little part that pops up here and there.
He doesn't do a ton of I don't think he's ever been like a lead actor.
No.
But he's always been a support guy that's always there, and he always adds something to the mix.
I feel like I've seen him in like Smallville as like a
You
farmer
very
or
possibly
something.
did.
I can't for the life of me. I know who he is because of whatever I'm trying to remember.
I don't remember what show it was, but there was an episode of another sitcom I watched where he was on, and some weird thing happened where like he either like sued the main characters or like caused the main characters to go to jail or something like that. And then at the end, like everything was fixed, and they're like, "Well, why did you do that?" He's like, "I never got to play the bad guy." And it was like just a random joke, but I was like, he never is like, and that's not true. He's gotten to play the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like there's at least one movie where he's technically the villain. He's always, if he's a bad guy, he's always like a minor, like asshole kind of bad guy. Like he's always like the loud boss, or like in the movie Sidekicks, he's the gym teacher that's always screaming at people.
Sidekicks. I do remember him in Sidekicks. That's right.
He
Yup.
Yep. I just remember him. He's like talking to Jonathan Brandis. He's like, "What do you got? A death wish?" He's trying to fight the other kid.
Yup. I do remember him in that. Completely forgot.
Yeah, but again, that's his stance. Like he's a throw. Like I don't say it lightly, but he's a throwaway character. Like he's in tons of stuff, but you never notice it.
I imagine him in a military uniform or something.
He was in the movie House, which is a very campy horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
He played an old army buddy of the main character who comes back at the end from the dead as the thing that's trying to like get his family. So again, he played the bad guy in that. So that might be what you remember him from.
Like I said, he's got a recognizable face. I know who he is.
His voice is recognizable, like whether he's screaming or just talking normally, like his voice is recognizable. His whole demeanor, the man is memorable, but somehow forgettable at the same time.
Yeah, it's a shame how many actors are like that, though.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
You don't get a lot of it nowadays because it's hard to stay either relevant or even in the spotlight long enough. But
Yeah.
it's one of those where back in the day, you have a lot of forgotten old souls that just kind of get lost in time, and
Yeah.
until they die, then you're like, oh yeah, I remember that guy.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know? So, well, let's go on to the next one. So, you find yourself drawn to sitcoms.
If I'm watching
basically,
TV,
if you're
yeah.
watching, and we kind of essentially you just answered the question previously, but you kind of are drawn further into like more of the older stuff of sitcom than you were are towards the 90s.
There, you know,
I mean, when you're dealing
with
with shows, though, they can last a good 10 years or
yeah,
so.
and
It kind of
that's where it
balances
ends up
out.
being like Night Court ran into the 90s.
Yeah.
Same thing with
That would be your bridge right there.
Perfect Strangers is, I believe, started like in 91
Yeah.
or maybe even 89, one of the two, but like ran into the 90s. And Perfect Strangers is another show that one of my favorite shows growing up. I don't know. That was just one of those ones that I always watched.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sorry. So for me, it's more or less everything has its ups and its downs. There's plenty of stuff from the 80s that like I go, oh, this is dog shit, and I don't watch it. Or I like will watch something and go, oh, this is fucking great.
Yeah.
And it holds a special spot in my heart. I talked to you about trying to find a show that I didn't watch very much of, but I remember bits of it fondly, was Moonlighting.
Yeah.
Which was
Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd, and I know the premise of the show, and I know I watched bits of it.
It is hard to find.
Yeah, it's not on Amazon at all. Like you can't buy it.
You can buy like the box set for like $200 or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know how it got so goddamn expensive.
It's probably just because it's a rare print.
Yeah, maybe.
But
yeah, I mean every era has its ups and its downs. Like the '90s have, I guess the easiest way to look at it is I watch a lot of stand-up comedy.
yeah,
So the '80s, the '90s, and like the 2000s, all have like different looks, different feels. Some people were really good. Others, you didn't understand how they got specials.
yeah, yep,
Nowadays, it's a lot less common for people to get hour-long specials. I think they're a little more discerning.
ADD.
Yeah,
The attention of today's society is
yeah. And I
that.
mean, it's much easier.
a
Like
blank
nowadays,
and-
people get like 50. Like Netflix did the I think it was like a 15-minute bit, where like people got like a 15-minute or 20-minute slot
to do like stand up.
to do stand up. Yeah, it was like a stand up collection where each comic got like 15 or 20 minutes.
I think I know what you're talking about. I
And
think I watched one or two of those.
yeah, and they weren't bad, but I mean,
Yeah.
at the same time, like you didn't get the full feel of what they could do.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I guess I never really noticed that. I never, yeah, it just didn't click. But I think you're absolutely right. You don't have these hour-long specials anymore. Like,
Yep.
when Dane Cook came out,
Yeah,
I remember watching his specials, and it was just an hour and a half of obnoxious noise.
right.
But
And
Mitch
I've heard
Hedberg, same
comics. I've heard comics talk about how it is very difficult to fill an hour, and I believe it because I don't write jokes. I'm not a stand-up comic.
Yeah.
I can only imagine it's difficult. But I look at, the '80s when Carlin and Richard Pryor and people are doing stand-up sets, and they're flush with material all the way up till the end.
yeah,
And I'm like, how is it that much harder? How is it that much harder for you guys to do it when those guys were already doing it?
that might be something we should kind of talk about one of our episodes, because I feel like we could elaborate a lot more into that direction. I'll have to pencil that in my notebook. Go.
Like I say, I mean,
Talks
I'm
about
not
stand up.
I'm not an expert on stand-up, so
Aging.
I mean, whatever I'm saying is just me like wondering.
Yeah,
don't get up
it's-
my ass about how.
But you're a consumer though. You are. It's not, you're not an expert of the craft itself, but you are
Right.
a consumer. You're the one that's been watching it, so you do have a say because it's all about you anyway. If it wasn't for people like you or
Right.
I and every other fucking person in the world, they wouldn't have their job or that position in
right.
their life. So like essentially, you're not criticizing the craft as much as you're criticizing the way that the comedy has evolved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get, yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, if you can cram in if you want to do a shorter set and cram in as much material as possible, like so that I'm rolling for 30 minutes, fine.
Yep.
But I mean, like I say, Carlin and Pryor and all them were doing it in the 80s, early 90s for an hour, and I was buckled in the whole time.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess I can move that into my next question, which would be, do you favor your comedies over drama or your actions over horror? Like, when you find yourself sitting on a couch wanting to watch something, what is it that you're drawn to more out of the genre? I know I kind of asked this earlier, but I was more looking at the era of what is it that you kind of go for. Now I want to know what your genre tastes.
It really depends on how I'm feeling. Like, if I'm just looking to veg out or, put something on that, like, I don't need to pay attention to, I'll put an action movie on or something like that, something that doesn't have a whole lot of plot.
Yep.
Or I'll put on a horror movie or something like that I can, like, listen to and, like, not miss much if I'm not paying attention. But if I really want to, if I'm caught by a movie, like, and I have the time to sit down and, like, actually invest in it, I would probably say it probably leans more towards a drama or a thriller nowadays. It didn't used to be. When I was younger, I didn't really get into the dramas that much. I watched a lot of comedy. I still do, but nowadays, like, I want, I guess, getting to be older, like, I want something out of it. If I'm going to sit and invest, I want to actually enjoy the story. I want something to come. Yeah,
I was going to ask you, why is that? Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's changed into?
I think it's just maturity. Like, I can't sit and waste my time when I only have limited time. I'm a father now, so I mean, Liam takes up most of my day when he's there, so I get a few hours after he goes to bed. Depending on, like, how late I want to stay up and how tired I want to be the next day. Like,
you want to get something out of your time. So
exactly. I only get so much time, and so it's very much I want to be moved. I don't want to, like, waste my time on a movie. And there are plenty of times where I think a movie is going to be okay, and I'll sit there and all of a sudden it's like, and I'll just start fast forwarding through stuff to get to the parts that, like, actually matter.
Yeah.
And people think that's cheating, and it might be, but it doesn't affect me.
I mean, I guess you can compare it to those people who want to read the ending of a book before they read the actual book. So
I'll go to the bookstore and, like, if I'm looking at a book, I'll read the last few pages before I decide to buy it.
Yeah, not me.
Which makes me a heathen to some people I know.
A part of me likes to go in blind.
Yeah, I mean, and there's been books that I've done that for, but I mean, for the most part, it's just like I've been asked the question before, and I'll say it. It's movies and books. I kind of feel the same. It's about the journey. It's not about the ending. For me, at least, I don't care about the ending. Because the ending doesn't matter unless the journey makes it matter. Yeah,
have a purpose to the ending.
Exactly. It's the ending is the ending. It's the middle that's got to give it some purpose or some meaning.
Which is some of the issues that I find into comedy. Mm-hmm. You don't need a purpose.
Yeah.
Even action, I guess. Action. I mean, the 80s and 90s were notoriously famous for their cheesy, crappy action flicks,
yes.
But they were fantastic too.
Well,
so enjoyable. Yeah.
There's nothing. Okay. There's something to be said, and it might be testosterone or whatever, male ego, whatever, but there's something to be said about watching a movie where a guy just shoots everything and makes many explosions and gets the girl. Like, there's something enjoyable about that. Yep. Like I say, it might just be that I'm a guy, so it plays into it. But
yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's definitely probably has a phallic kind of thing, but
I loved watching Rambo. Why the fuck would I want to watch Rambo otherwise? Like, other than the fact that he shoots everybody.
Yep.
Like, he just murks the entire Vietnamese army, essentially.
All right. I mean, you don't go to a Jean-Claude Van Damme film and to watch him, bitch slap people. No, you want to see him do his sidekick.
Yeah, I want to see him roundhouse kick like 95 people, like,
and split in the air, and then watch him go flying. Yep.
Exactly. Like.
Yeah. Well, I'll close this last question down to it's going to be a couple questions I think into it, but
Sure.
if you were to define yourself as a film, if you were to try to write a film that you would want to be in, how would you go about it?
That I would want to be in,
Yes.
or that would
you
be based off of
not
me?
based. You would
Okay.
be in fantasy. If you want,
Okay.
you wanted to be a goddamn hobbit and
Okay.
travel
well,
the
I wouldn't-
Shire, is that the kind of film that you would write or be in? Like, what is it that you see as your person, your imaginative world in your head? Where do you find yourself in?
I,
As a
find
character.
myself most of the time when I'm transported into a movie, like if I find myself like in the lead role in my head,
Yep.
as opposed to whoever's on the screen, it's usually a fantasy movie. I tend to like fantasy novels and fantasy movies. There was always a draw to them in some way. I think I had not an inflated sense, but I had a romanticized sense of chivalry and honor and all that. I believe that was probably what I felt most akin to.
Yeah.
I guess would be the right word. Trying to
Like
find the right-
you would want essentially yourself to be that kind of person
Yeah.
and live your life that way.
Yeah.
Not just
Yeah. That's where if I had to peg myself into a hole, that would be the way I would be.
essentially you'd be the wandering gunslinger in a fantasy world that would go and
Except I
right the
never believed in
wrongs
guns.
you're not in the fantasy realm. There's really not a term for it because
Yeah. No, for sure.
you could be a paladin is more of a righteous side of God thing.
Yeah.
And they don't really have like just a traveler, but the gunslinger
It's
has
valid,
a better choice because it's all about upholding the right, the right and wrong,
Yeah.
without having to
It's
include a
like I
religious
said, we talked
section.
about one of our episodes about D&D, and it's like the draw of D&D is you get to be in a story where you get to be the hero. And who doesn't want to be
Or
a
the
hero?
villain.
Huh?
Or the villain.
Or the villain. But I mean,
You can be
for
whatever you
me-
want. That's the great thing about it.
For me, it's always been, I get to be the hero.
Yeah.
And I've gone through, the various versions of a hero in my head, but I think being the hero or being able to hold myself to that standard is what especially as a child, I think I wanted to do that more.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I wanted to be.
Yeah. Essentially, the fantasizing part, because we talked about Sidekick, and that's kind of what brought that question on.
Yeah.
If you look at Sidekick, that's
Yeah.
all he does is he just fantasizes about being this sidekick to Chuck Norris in all his
I don't
films.
even think he
Wanted to
I
be the
think-
same thing. He wanted to be a hero.
Yeah, he wanted to be
He's
wanted
tough,
to be Chuck
strong,
Norris.
and
It
a
just the way his fantasies played out, he was the sidekick.
Yep.
But I think he in general just wanted to be what Chuck Norris was.
Yeah. But I mean, if you want to break it down, it's probably more of a mentor kind of concept because if you look at what he
Yeah.
was doing, Chuck Norris was being fantasized as a mentor to like when he's
Yeah.
climbing the ropes. Chuck Norris is right there along with him. Come on, you can do it. You
Yeah,
got that,"
I'm
it's like
always
that
remembering
mentor.
like the bits where like he was in like movies that Chuck Norris was in. So and that's where in my mind I was like, hey, you couldn't really take Chuck Norris out of that, but
No. But yeah, essentially that's where I got that question was.
For sure.
How would that be if it was for you? And I figured it would probably be fantasy related, to be honest, just because I know you well enough. But yeah.
I was never much for sci-fi. Like I watched some sci-fi, but I've never been much for it. I think probably the closest I got was, oh God, what was it? No, I've forgotten, so I didn't get that close to it. I'd say the second Highlander movie probably is the closest sci-fi movie I really got into, but
The Quickening.
yeah, it was Time to the Quickening.
Yeah, the worst film that people go, that doesn't exist. We've talked about that
That
before.
movie is to Highlander fans what Oh shit! I just had it. I was gonna say something about Firefly, but we're just gonna. No, because there's nothing really that like happened that you go, no, that didn't happen.
No.
As far as Firefly, there was another movie. I guess like you look at some of the early, like the first 3 Star Wars movies. Like people think that the
like you're talking about like episode 1 and episode 2.
Yeah. Everyone just wants to kind of forget those.
Yeah, sadly.
Being the fact that I'm not a Star Wars guy, I didn't mind them.
Yep.
I watched them once.
Yep.
And was like, that's enough.
Episode
But that's
1
really
was great.
that's really been my feeling about Star Wars in general. Has been like, once is enough.
Yeah, I'll have to write that down in my notes for a later podcast. We'll go down that road eventually.
I'm not a Star Wars. I'm not a Star Trek guy either. Like I watched some of Star Trek and it's fine, but sci-fi's never been my thing.
Yeah.
So aliens never really did much for me.
Yeah. To each their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I guess that's really the only other kind of question I was going to lead off onto was, do you find yourself, being the hero or a villain in your own story? But you kind of answered that already.
I don't know. It was one of those things. It's the same thing in video games. Like video games that give you the option to be the villain. I can never bring myself to be the villain.
No.
Like even when I do something wrong, I go, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that.
You have this kind of unconscious, like, ethical, moral.
Yeah, it's
that
an
just
odd
kind of gets in the
ethical
way.
and moral compass that like won't let me veer off.
Yep. So, yeah, that's awesome. Well, I mean, as 2 guys who have just a love for film in general, I think that one thing that this new direction is going to be really fun is we're going to be able to be precise and specific on whatever we want to be.
Right.
But the idea that we don't want to do is we're not going to sit there and just go through the film like we've done in the past couple. We're just going to talk about what we like, what we didn't like, those types of things that we notice.
Right.
Things that we think are worthy, and we might kind of come back to certain questions or certain things that are going to be repetitive. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
To keep us flowing. But so I mean, that's what I got for you, man. A little quick into the realm of Aram and film.
Yeah.
So,
stay tuned for the next episode of The Reverse, where I ask Tim questions, and we'll see where that goes.
They're not going to be as good.
They're not going to, because at this point, old Aram's having trouble coming up with them.
All right.
So,
all right, man. Stay tuned, and we'll catch you later, guys.
thanks for stopping by.
Peace.